I have the list. There's no record as to when did they leave, where did they go, just names and ages. Some of them were very little. So I've also asked another question: how many remain Jewish? Which I mean, I don't, you know, it's very difficult. Some of them are only 3 or 4 years old. And if they, not that I think that they were forced to change religion, but if your family does, if you are not, let's say it's 6 years now that you're away from your family, and if they take you in that environment and you're happy, so some of them have changed their religion. Maybe they were not as brought up as, first of all, I was nearly 14. I was much more indoctrinated. I have Jewish schools. If you're 3 or 4 years old, you haven't even been taught your family background. So that's another question. I will say this. I arrived in England and I am in London, and I knew how to read Hebrew, and somebody said that it's around the corner, and these were little synagogues. These were not big ones like we had at home. Then somebody says, a little synagogue. So I thought, well, at least I read Hebrew. Twice I went to a synagogue, and twice I walked out completely alone. Now, was I such a threat at 14, or let's say maybe I was already 15 at that point, that no one could, even if they had spoken Yiddish to me, or just touch me and said, who are you, know what, and I may have said, I don't know, you know, I can answer. I think there was a tremendous fear of having this foreign person there. It's a whole different world now. You've got to understand these are English people, and they're very prim and proper. But the Quakers that I stayed with couldn't have been better people. So again, I was exposed to only Gentile people. I never stayed with Jewish people. And I have only high regard for them as to how they treated me. But there was a religion never came in. It was they never asked. I have a wonderful story of one of the guys who is in that movie. Was it? No, I think it's in the other one where he doesn't get picked up. He's at the waiting to be picked up, and nobody picks him up. And a minister from a church comes, and he takes both the boys to his house. And he gives them some milk to drink, and they don't touch it. And he realizes that they're afraid to touch it because the glass may not become... They came from Slovakia, from a very strictly Orthodox area, that the glass may not be kosher enough for them. So he realizes that, and he tells them he gets glass or whatever he does. He tells them that he's not going to change their religion, he's going to teach them what their religion is all about. So in his church, he apparently built a little corner where they could pray their way. And the boy, when he turned bar mitzvah, he gave him they made a bar mitzvah for him, got a new suit and all that. Later on, the father survives. He is in Israel. And somebody contacts him. He said, you know, your children are being brought up by this minister. Get them out of there. He said, you don't want them indoctrinated. So he insists that the older one leaves. The older one became homeless, and as he grew up, doesn't want to have any part of the religion. He writes to his father, please leave my brother there. He is fine. And the brother is now in Israel. They're both in Israel, and he's Orthodox. So you have stories and stories. Each story is different. Each story is amazing. I know there's Alice there. I've met her. We usually speak together. She's in Washington, D.C. Fascinating story. She's the one where the mother takes the child out and puts her back in again. She's one of those girls. The 3 girls got out. They stayed together as a family. When later on, the Czech embassy needs because they were brought up in a Czech environment, needs somebody. So they had schooling. They sent them to school. Becomes a secretary in Washington, D.C. They want to have, they need help, so they tell Alice they want to transfer her to Washington, D.C. She said, I don't want to go without my sister. However, she does come here eventually, probably hoping she'd get her over here. She worked for the Czech embassy, finally ended up in the United Nations, married somebody from the United Nations. I went to visit her in Washington, D.C. on their travels and on all their did, they collected the most beautiful things of art and built a whole house around it. There are stories and stories. Her sister is still in England, didn't come, and one sister died. We were on the train together too. And this is what, and I was also together with the one with the beard, who is turned to be a minister in the Philippines, and he's back in Czechoslovakia, and he's going from school to school, telling everybody about the story. So I just know a few of them, I mean, but it's a fascinating thing that if you save people, what can be done.